Hello everyone, welcome to my oil painting class. And today we're going to look at Siberian Kremlin in Tobolsk at winter. So the task for today, we have a lot of pale white, well, different colors, and I would like us to explore how we can paint um, using varieties of very subtle colors, but using a lot of color. So on my palette, I have some warm colors. I've got 3 warm colors: rose madder, cadmium yellow, and Naples red, or portrait pink, or any other pale pinks you have. If you don't have it, rose madder with some extra white will be quite similar. And then I have some cool colors. Well, I've got white and black as well, Payne's gray, or any other blacks you might have. So from the cool colors, I have blue gray. Again, don't worry if you don't have it. We can mix white and ultramarine and tiny bit of Payne's gray or black to make it. It's just a bulk of paint, which is easier to start using straight away. I have cobalt blue. I have emerald green or viridian or anything which looks like emerald green. Sometimes it's phthalo blue, slightly darker version of it. Sometimes it's Windsor's, like phthalo green or Windsor's green. So I have my ultramarine and some violet. Now violet next to our warm colors will be a warm color as well, but it's in my cooler section today. I have a gray background, medium gray. This will help me to get my whites much stronger. If I paint on a white surface, you don't see the white is not glowing. Okay. I have a square format. I've got a line here, so I'm going to use the other side of my board for testing some of the colors, and then eventually I'll cut it off from the painting. So I have my oils in one pot, and I have some tubes for washing my brushes in another one. So I'm going to start with using a little bit of tubes for sketching. So my narrow synthetic brush, and I'm gonna go for slightly darker color to sketch with. I'm gonna go for ultramarine and some Payne's gray. Okay, it's gonna be very, very dark. So if I'll add tiny bit of white, so I can just see the color a little bit. I want it darker, but don't want it to be black looking. Something a little bit darker than my board. Okay, so we're looking at Tobolsk Kremlin, the place where I was born. So Kremlin in Russian means fortress. Okay, so it was the first Siberian, fortress in Siberia made out of stone. Very, very famous, and it's white. So very, again, famous, unique building. Well, the whole place is very unique. And inside we have a beautiful, again, very old cathedral of Saint Sophia. So let's have a look. Square format. We have some beautiful branches of pine trees at the front. If we ignore them for the moment and look how much of the snow, kind of the land we have, okay? So if I were to break my painting into half, my square into half, and another half, so that snow line is going to be probably below that quarter. So this is halfway through, this is a quarter, so my snow line will be a bit lower than that. And it goes a little bit diagonally just to show them perhaps the wall perspective of them, of the wall here, okay? So the fortress was built originally for the Silk Route from China and India to go through by land and not kind of northern Silkway, and then go to Europe. So men staying in and being safe with all their goods while they were traveling. Right, so let's have a look at the wall for the fortress here. So loads of things going on, but it's harder to identify what they are. Now, because I'm very familiar with the place, I can see there is a smaller wall and a gate, and there's a small building here, well, at the beginning of the building, a two-story building, and there's a gorgeous tower on the side. So if I were to place the rough thickness for the gates, okay, and then I can see, right, this is going to be the end of my painting, just in case if you can't quite see my line there. And the hotel, kind of the visitors, ancient, well, the old fashioned, it's a museum now. The old hotel is going to be somewhere here. Okay. And we've got a tower. Again, try not to spend too much time because we might need to move them. We might need to change the positioning. I'm going to look for the widest part of the rooftop of the tower. And looking at my markings, it's slightly higher than halfway through my photograph here. So if this is halfway through, so my tower is going to be somewhere here. I'll just put a line for it, a straightish line, that will be fine, just again to give me an idea. And I want to leave quite a bit of sky positioning my tower. I want to look quite a bit of sky. And how much space? Maybe this is going to be much smaller. I want to have quite a bit of sky again left between the tower and the cathedral. Again, if I'll help myself with dividing the picture into half, my tower might need to be much smaller than I'm actually drawing it. It's in the left-hand side of the, sorry, in the right-hand side of the painting. So that's my picture. So, okay, maybe my tower needs to be much smaller somewhere here. Okay. So plan it roughly. Once my tips will dry after I've cleaned the surface, it will stop being shiny. Okay, maybe something there. Again, I'll evaluate it once I've placed all the details. Okay. And let's have a look at the cathedral. Now we've got two towers for the cathedral. And again, if I were to look for them as a group of all three towers together. So I'm more interested in the space between my big tower and the cathedral. So that's sky. That's a gorgeous kind of very pale pink color. So the tower needs to be wider. So maybe I will make it slightly wider here. So I'm looking for spaces. The sky, the proportion of the sky here on the right, the tower, and then the gap of sky in between. I think might need to be a little bit smaller. Okay, otherwise it's clashing with the volume of my tower. Okay, and then I can start making the judgment for the tower, for the cathedral, how big the cathedral is going to be. Maybe something like this. Two smaller towers on the sides, one slightly big wider in the center. Okay, so we're thinking of widths. We can come back to the height shortly. Again, if I were to compare to my picture, smaller tower, smaller domes, the blue ones are almost below the halfway through line, maybe just a little bit, majority of them are below, and the golden one is above. If I'll just do it as a semicircle shape, that will be plenty. And we've got all the shapes, all the crosses and all the decorations of them above. Okay. Just gonna check how the towers will look if I were to find the bases. They're not gonna look too big or too short. And then under each of the tower, well, it's a facade of the cathedral. Got the 3 small domes. Well, it's not domes, it's more of a round shape facade. Okay. Now, the windows don't need to come in yet, but just to give you an idea, so you're not, you understand in the form there, I've just placed it. Sometimes by placing a rough windows kind of positioning, gives you an idea, have we got the right proportions? Have we got, do we need to enlarge anything, work with that? Because now I need to come back to my tower and my big tower and check if that's all working well. And I'll have the shape of the tower now a little bit more analyzed. Have a lovely belt which gets slightly wider at the top. And we've got a very pointy roof. Okay, perhaps if I were to find the middle line for it, it's quite a pointy roof. I'll do my triangle of the roof to my narrow shape of the tower. Then it will be easier for me to find the correct angle for it, because the roof will be sloping just a little here. There will be snow settling in there, so that doesn't have to be, it's going to be snow somewhere then. But that angle, tiny bit of the angle is going to be there. We can make a very small oval for that edge of the roof, but we can do that with color when we work with it afterwards. And then there will be some windows. So the windows on a tower, the small tiny little openings, I think they're more decorative. In the center of the tower, there will be almost like straight lines. If they're going towards the right, they will be leaning towards the right. Yeah, if they're going towards the left from the center, they will be leaning towards the left. I think I might have drawn a bit too many. Let me drop the box so it will be reflecting less for you. Okay. Just double check that your lines are straight. I just realized my rooftop has gone slightly off center. Gonna check the roof on this hotel. There'll be some windows, but I don't really need to draw them. What I will do, I'll divide this fence, this wall, a little bit of a gate. There are loads of gates at this Kremlin. I think these are just not an important, probably more modern gates. No, I don't know. Maybe not modern gates, but the least important, maybe for taking some of the goods. I think there's some little elements of probably entrance to the tower from the inside. So we're in the outer side of the Kremlin, and there probably will be the wall continuing after the tower, but we can't really see it. We're not going to do much there. And another element for our gates and the wall. So originally there will be, I think these are more decorative little gaps, but originally they would have been for arrows to go through them. I don't think they actually been ever used for that. I think the only fighting it's seen when it was wooden Kremlin, which was made out of very, very big tree trunks, very wide. Okay. And perhaps another line on the ground, there is some sort of path, so we can see something slightly darker. As our Kremlin's baseline has a slight angle, the path almost kind of balances it by placing it a bit more straight or a little bit even more leaning down towards the right. Okay. Now we can plan some of the trees, perhaps in lengths, and perhaps how far they're going to go into the picture. But I'd rather not do a lot of them. So for example, on the top branch, I love that. Very wintry, very Christmassy. It doesn't feel like it's going too far further than the cathedral, but I'd like to plan it to come out a little bit further. So maybe somewhere here, maybe a wider branch somewhere there. So just planning of the mass. So when we start painting the sky, some of these lines will be disappearing, but at least it gives us an idea. Okay, I quite like that narrow point coming to the left, and then it's getting a bit slightly wider towards the cathedral. So somewhere here might be my narrow point of very little branches, and the new smaller ones will come up at the front. I love that big branch under the domes of the cathedral as well. So perhaps just under the roof, and the branch will just fluff up and down from here. So again, it just gives me an opportunity. Okay, so it's roughly somewhere up to here. I start thinking about it. I start making those decisions. I start being aware. Okay. I'm going to think about the branch right in the bottom left corner. I'm going to leave it out for the moment. And then some of the tree branches coming on the right. Again, carefully not to overwork it. Probably one's going to come out somewhere here, almost to the corner. Different parts of my painting reflect at different angles. Okay, so again, how much of the tower, maybe again, thinking, planning, curvature, yeah, how those curves of the branches will come in. Again, you might lose it also. If you're not going to draw them, that's absolutely fine as well. But for me, that's my planning and thinking part. And perhaps, because if I'll draw something now and I don't like it, well, my decision is more or less made. Okay, I think that will be enough. I'll remove my central line on the tower here. Then it doesn't clash with my branch here. Otherwise, it just looks a little strange. Okay. Right, so I've just amended my tower, just made it slightly shorter. I think it's works better for me here. But it's okay if you would have kept it a little bit long, taller as my earlier version. Right, let's now start mixing some colors. I have a medium filbert brush, and I'm going to start painting the sky. But before we do that, let's analyze it a little bit. Now, probably on the screen, you can't see as much, but if you've got an image, which I've sent you, we can see slight change of darkness within the sky, from darker to more medium to light. We also see slight change in color. There's more blue in the top, and there is more pink close to the gates and the towers. So planning this ahead is very important, almost like talking through or doing some samplings of what the colors of the tower is going to be, the kind of the wall, and what the colors for the sky is going to be. So what I'd like to do on the side of my gray, I just want to test some of the colors and explore them. So I'm going to go for a little bit of oil. Okay. And I'm going to start with some pale pink. So if I'll use my portrait pink, okay, with some white. Okay. So if I were just planning my sky, I'm planning just the colors coming together. So I'm gonna, you can watch me, you can just test your colors as well on the side. And I'm going to put perhaps blue-gray with a little bit of white, something slightly darker. Okay, maybe much darker than that, because I need to make sure that my colors don't clash. So I'm thinking of the wall here. So that's maybe my blue-gray. I'm almost going to just surround this block of light with different colors. Maybe if I'll go for cobalt blue with some white, perhaps for my tower. Okay. Or maybe it could have been emerald green with cobalt blue and some white, so it's more turquoise. Okay, so I'm just checking those colors against each other. Okay, I think some of these towers on the cathedral could be a little similar, and again, a little bit of blue and a little bit of pink could come together as well. Now the tops of the cathedral will have more blue. So if I were to play the colors together, okay, so I'm just planning my color scheme instead of just mixing them as we normally do, like in rows. This is almost placing them. when it looks like the top tower, wide tower, has a little bit of violet in it. Okay, maybe not so dark, but kind of violety greens, violety blues. And this will be a darker top of the tower, of course. Okay, so I'm exaggerating, I'm planning. So maybe if I'll keep more blue and green for the cathedral, and maybe more blue and violet, violet and green for the tower. Then there will be blue and gray for the gates and the wall. And again, I need to make sure that my sky doesn't clash with too many blues on the cathedral. So perhaps that pale pink will spread slightly higher, and then slowly kind of against the cathedral stays more pinkish or getting more pale violet, and only then at the top will become fresh cobalt blue and white. Okay, so that's my thinking. So that's giving me an opportunity to make my decisions for the sky. So it's need to have pale blue, gently mixing with violet, and then slowly going into the portrait pink. Okay. Now if I mix by accident some green and pink, I'm gonna have some mucky colors. So after my experiment, I can see that could be not so pleasant. Sorry, my brush just picked up some green by accident, so I can see it on my paper palette. So I'm going to wash my brush, and we're going to start painting the sky. So we don't want any green here. So this time I'm going to have more oil on my brush, and I can even apply the oil for the whole sky. Let's do that. So that would be nice and easy to apply the sky more evenly. Maybe the opposite, this will create some extra textures. Now, when you're applying the oil, just make sure it's not too runny. It just keeps the moisture on the surface, so it will be not too harsh. A little bit more softness there. Don't think we'll need much oil in runniness today, unless if we're doing the branches later on. Okay. Tiny bit more. Tiny bit more oil. I tend to add my oil as I go, rather than make it mucky and contaminated. Yeah, I want to keep my oil here clean. Right, so let's start with white, cobalt blue. We'll need quite a bit of that paint, so we've got quite a lot of sky, quite a lot of blue at the top. So I'm using some extra oil to keep the paint moist. Okay, also doing a little sample here allows me to check how much darker that sky is going to be. If I'll make it too white, we're going to lose that depth. And everything it will be quite easy to make things white. We want to see a little bit of extra color. Okay, let's go for this white. Well, the bluey white. I'm going to block it in first. Now, when we paint in big even spaces, like we've got the sky here, so I'm just going to leave tiny bit of line for my branches, so then I know how far I want to go with my branches as a reminder. Right, so when we paint in big open spaces, we don't want to paint it like a fence. Excuse me. So I'm using different direction strokes. So I'm not just going to paint it from left to right or top to bottom. Okay. Now this part of the tree branch is going to be quite solid, so I might leave it out. And let's plan how much of the sky we're going to see under the branch here. And I'm ready to start getting lower for the area where I want to do the violet. So I'll need to wipe my brush, get most of the blue off it. I'm gonna mix new color. I can wash it only a little bit, doesn't have to be a lot because we will be mixing the colors together. But if you think it's overwhelming amount of blue on your brush, you can take some of it off. I'm going to pick up some white and I'm going to paint the pale pink next and then get the violet in the middle. So let's go for pink. So some white and some fresh pink. Now another option, and I'm going to check it out actually now before I apply it on my painting, is to use white and rose madder. Now, rose madder might give you a fresher pink without yellow in it. I think portrait pink, Naples pink sometimes has warmth to that. So let me just check. So that's my rose madder. I think that might be even better pink. If you were to mix both, that would be fine as well. Okay, so rose madder pink. Just make sure it's very light. It's very light. Okay, let's find. I'm using quite chunky paint, quite thick volume of paint on my brush. So when I'm applying it on the surface here, I need to do a few strokes for it to stay properly there. Now the effect I'm interested to get is that glow, and that's going to come from the paler colors, again slightly, well at the moment they're quite dark, but slightly darker tones. Yeah, I'm going to have a big chunky branch here, but and again we can tweak it as well. So if you were to put your pink a little bit wider than your tower, kind of going over some of your lines, that's absolutely fine as well. Might just make it a little bit wider because we can shrink the glow of light quite quickly with a darker color. So my tower is a little bit not quite the right angles, but I know when I make it slightly darker, I'll amend it. And let's do the same pink. Perhaps tiny bit. Well, let's do the same pink anywhere here between the towers. I'll do a couple of strokes here. Just want to see the color. I'm not going to be able to do it precise because I haven't gotten the domes yet. But seeing a little bit of color against the gold and against the strong blue will be quite nice. Almost like a little mosaic of light will be beautiful. I'll shape up the domes later on as well. So far, just more of a color going round. Okay. I'll roughly draw some of these elements here. Okay, and some of that pink here. And then further on the left and further on the right, I want to use a little bit stronger pink. Only small changes, but it will be a different glow of that redness. If you mix in your paint with oil, you should have some lovely consistency. Just make sure you do add oil to your paint before you put it on your painting. Surface oil and presence of oil in within your paint on the brush will make a very different way of applying it. This is again slightly stronger pink. Here. Okay, that's my remembrance about the branches. Okay. I need to blend more my pink between darker, well, slightly darker pink and lighter pink. That's fantastic. Just use some thicker paint. That glow. Those small nuances will be most wonderful thing to see while you're painting some thicker paint over some softer, lovely, paler colors. I'll do maybe a little bit more thicker, paler pink here as well. Right, and I'm ready to add some violet to it as well. I can add violet straight away to my pink here. Very small amount at a time. Violet is much darker than our rose madder, but we need to make it lighter than the existing blue. Okay, I think that's something right here. So if I'll block it in first, and then I'll blend the pink and violet together first, before I blend it with blue. So if I block it here first, so then I know my color stays fresher. Okay. And then I can bring all that paler pink, or just mix two colors together, or I can mix them straight away in the painting. Want to bring some of that thicker paint again. Okay. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of violet with my blue. again separately on my palette first. So then some of that interaction could come a little bit further into my blue. Okay, and perhaps some of that paler violet could go slightly higher into the blue. So it's not just the perfect border, but it's also like a little glow of light. Just a tiny bit more white here. Almost like, not quite clouds, but there could be even a little bit of light catching up. And the blue is now very turquoise light. Even we haven't used any turquoise or green there, but against the pinks and violets, it becomes very exciting, fresh blue. Okay, much happy with that now. Right, our next step will be working into our towers. Well, on all the surrounding, on all the whites of the buildings and the fence. And let's follow our formula. Let's start from a little bit more violety blues, violety greens. I think probably blues I'll leave for some of the snow on a tower, but maybe stay with violet and blue here. All segments, the cathedral, the tower, and the fence can stay equally dark. They don't have to be, they could have sub-varieties of tone, very settled though, within them, but overall they need to read. At the moment they read as a silhouette together, yeah? Just slightly too dark to what we want. So let's have some white. Let's have some violet. And my earlier violet was much paler. Now this time I can't go for violet on its own. It's going to be clashing with the sky too much. But if I mix a small amount of ultramarine, okay, that will be a better color, maybe a little bit more. And its darkness I'll only find out when I put it next to my whites. And do a little bit more of it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna block the top part of the tower. So that section turned away from any direct light. So that's gonna have definite that a little bit of extra warmth from violet. And I'm gonna put a little bit of the violet on the left-hand side and right-hand side of the base of the tower. Okay. Just going to double check its width. I think it might need to be slightly wider than what I've done so far. Okay, that's better. We need to get rid of all the darker tones as outlines. Okay, that's all good there. And in the center, I want to put more emerald green. Might leave this brush and pick up another brush so they stay cleaner. So emerald green and some white. It can be slightly lighter, but even if it will be the same darkness, the colors will start be exciting next to each other. And if I block it in first, I can then blend it. Okay. Now this is a dry surface for our tower, so it might be a little bit harsh to put your paints on. Just persevere. I take it all the way down. Not sure why I've not done it with a violet here. And I'm going to use the same green, emerald green, perhaps almost like outline my darker section of the tower. Perhaps there's some patterns, architectural. I can even put it against some of the windows to show the width of the stone. You just start glowing a little more in light. And only when I'm ready, let's say I had enough of the green, I filled all of the green, I can now blend, just putting the brush between the green and the violet, it will blend my color. I'll clean the brush again. I just put the brush again in the middle of violet and green, and that just will naturally blend it together. Okay. We can tweak other things, but to be honest, I wouldn't overwork it because we're going to have a branch here anyway. So we're probably going to have a lot of it covered up. So violet and green. The more fresher colors you'll have on their own, the better. Okay, and just double check that your sides of the towers are straight. I don't know if it's my tower or if it's my camera. Just gonna straighten a tiny bit one of the walls here. And again, when I'll have the branches, I'll make my final decisions there. And let's now work more into the other parts. Let's mix more emerald green with cobalt blue and some white for the towers of the cathedral. So I'm going to just block them in as they are now. The reason we don't have oil on the surface to paint the towers, it will be easier for us to insert other colors in small quantities. So this one's going to come in here. Now, if you need a smaller brush, help yourself with slightly smaller scale brush. Okay, this one's going to stay there for the moment. I'm going to add other colors to it shortly, but not yet. Okay. I'll add more light and dark to the towers of the cathedral once I've done the domes. Excuse me. Right, so I'm gonna leave my cathedral towers plain at the moment. Let's fill the rest of the wall with a bit of color. Now we were looking at some sort of gray, blue varieties of blues in there. I might in the corner of that building put maybe a little bit of violet, but let's give that one a go. I've got a little violet on my brush already, so I might start with that little corner of ultramarine and violet. Okay, just need to double check that it's not too light. I'd prefer to make it slightly darker than too light. On the other hand, our branches will be very pale or very dark. So if we make the wall too dark, it's going to be too much as well. So it's a balance. It is a shadow on the white wall. Okay, maybe too still dark. Maybe too violet for me as well. Maybe I want to have more ultramarine. A little bit more calmer. Again, that violet is here, a variety of color. Is it too dark? I think it's too dark. Let's get some more white. If you mix in the color and you kind of keep adding fresh white or fresh blue, and it's still, you're getting more paint, but you're still not happy with the right color, mix it in a different part of the palette, almost like start for fresh. So let's use this one. That's better, I think. And I might just balance it with some of the violet, perhaps on a gate. Again, if I'll have some lighter snow below, again, I'm thinking next step and next step and next step, comparing those colors. So if I'll paint the lower part of the wall slightly darker, perhaps with more violet and blue, and then we can go for more fresh ultramarine. Okay, some ultramarine and white. And it could still stay dark, but again, not as dark as we'll need for fine branches. Now just block these elements here. And we can blend the blue with violet we placed earlier. Sometimes painting in between your sketch lines, what I'm trying to do here, gives you enough darkness to show some of the shadows. Sometimes it's too complex. Most of the time I'll leave it if I need to remember to see other shapes. So if there's a little bit of some darkness going on for the gaps for the windows, that's fine. But if you would have painted it as a block, that's totally fine as well. Right, some more ultramarine. I think I'm going to make it slightly darker for the rooftop. There will be some dark roof surface as well, but I think I want the snow on the roof being this kind of darkness. And then anything in between blue and violet for the rest here. And again, any of those colors could go on the cathedral's shapes. Again, I'll leave them facades shape. Again, it's easier for me to see it where it's going to be, where it's going to remain. Not too worried about the border of the cathedral and the hotel building, because there will be a big branch and it's probably going to be all covered up anyway. Okay, much happier with that. So the whole complex shape standing out against the light sky. That's good. I'm going to use similar blue for tiny bit of snow here on the rooftop. Now, ideally, I wanted to paint the darker roof first, but while I've got this color, at least it will be a reference point for me, even if it's might not be as successful later on. We'll see. Okay, so a little bit of different color. Not, well, I don't know, halfway through, kind of lower part of the wall. The snow will be reflecting extra light, and I think that shows if we put a different color and a little bit more variety of darkness for the lower part. So we not often see that in our paintings. Okay, and I'm ready to paint the snow. And again, the snow probably going to be something similar to some of these emerald greens, but maybe fresh cobalt blue will be good as well. So if I'll use some of the white, might I need some more oil? When I get my pot a little mucky because I was trying to get the remaining of the oil off, that's when I wipe it off rather than just stopping up the fresh oil. That's another reason why I only pour a little bit of my 3 oils at a time, so I can clean it and continue painting. So cobalt blue with some white. If you have got some emerald green on the brush as well, that's fine. So we're looking for an effect of the turquoise color. Okay, tiny bit more, I think, lighter tone. I think this will work a little bit lower, but tiny bit more white. Next to the walls. Wanted a nice sharp contrast of that very pale cobalt blue. This time you can go, if you have a darker line like I have next to the Kremlin's wall, I'm going to go over it So everything is remaining quite pale. Sometimes snow settle in snow drifts by the walls and buildings and fences. So my snow is going up. That's all good. So if you need to cover the darker line, feel free to improvise. That will be quite a normal view there. Again, I left a little bit of a line we were planning for the path. So I can just make my final strokes slightly different there. Also, if I can have almost as a oval, almost like, if I can make circular oval type of composition. So I'm going to have a branch which will be touching up that oval at the top, cathedral on one side, tower on the other side. And perhaps if I use the dark and light tone, if I use something darker on the sides on the lower part of the snow and keep it lighter in the center, that will continue with my oval composition here. Okay, so let's have slightly darker cobalt blue. Again, this will be under the branches, so the branches will help with that as well. And the path will have some similar darkness as well. Okay. I can also make a path by lifting some paint using one of our tissues or a damp brush. I'm going to try doing a tissue. So it will have a little bit of a texture. We can see some gray, but that varieties come into place. Okay, and I need to paint on this one here as well. And even perhaps some ultramarine blue, because we're going to have some snow on some of the branches of our pine trees. So I might make this corner more into ultramarine even. Okay, so that's lovely snow. Okay, and again, so that white doesn't take us totally away from the picture. I'm almost bringing it kind of slightly darker on the corners on the left and right, and then making it lighter towards the center. I can put fresh white, perhaps even somewhere between the tower and the cathedral. Again, it's almost like a link of extra light. That's compositional planning. Maybe it will offset the path as well. Okay, don't want the path being too perfectly thin of a line. I wanted something there. It doesn't have to be too strong. Okay, I'm happy with that now as well. And finally, with the snow and the outer kind of lower border of the Kremlin, at the moment I have a very perfect line, except perhaps here partially smudged it. I prefer to have lost and found borders. So if it's too sharp, maybe gentle softness. Just a clean brush or kind of just a dry brush, just to get some of that massive variety of sharpness. That contrast settles in. Smaller quantities, a little bit larger quantities. That's much more natural. It's much easier to the eye. Okay. Much more snowier, snowy, fluffy. That presence of that cold air is there. Okay. Now majority of the snow is done. Now we need to work into our darks and nuances. Right, so how about we work now on rooftops? Let's start with the cathedral. Let's get some bold, strong colors, and then the tower and the branches of the trees will start coming in. Some maybe windows, some of the decorations on the walls. I'm going to go for smaller brush now, and I'm going to start with my paler blues. Let me pick up another small brush. Here we go. So let's start from beautiful cobalt blue. Now that's need to be much, much stronger in its darkness. So I still have a tiny bit of white with it, but it's quite a lot of stronger blue there. And I'm going to again just insert, almost place quite thickly the shapes. Now filbert brush is easier to paint with those domes. Think of them as a little round forms at the top, and then somebody almost tied a piece of string, and it gets a little bit wider. Now I'm going to have to come back with color of the sky to touch it up to help me with the form there as well. Unless if I were to, can I make them bigger? I can just make them just a tiny bit bigger. So I'm just wiggling my brush left and right, gently, almost like turning it. Just to widen it up. A little bit at a time. Okay. If anything, a little bit awkward in shape. If it's small shape, you can enlarge it and fix it that way. If you think it's getting bigger and bigger and it's not quite right, stop and we can touch it up with this color of the sky, and I'll show you how to do it. So that's why I'm not too worried about my shapes not being perfect. Okay. And we're going to do the cathedrals, well, the main tower of the cathedral. Again, I'm going to have another clean brush. And this time I'm going to use rose madder and cadmium yellow. I'm going to mix them together with a little bit of white. Now, need to have a golden, kind of a warm golden color. First, rose madder will give us that extra depth and warmth of the color. On its own, cadmium yellow is not going to give us that effect. Okay, don't be scared of putting, making the color quite orangey. The reason we're using rose madder in comparison to other colors, crimson would be too deep and it's overwhelms the yellow. It's not going to have that lovely orange. Cadmium red, if you touch that with some whites and some of the pinks and kind of color of the sky, that will give us a lot of problems as well. So rose madder is something in between. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint the shape. Again, my paint on the brush is quite thick. So I'm going to paint the whole shape first. It reminds us the shape of the onions. This one. Okay, and it has a little flatter surface lower, which I haven't painted yet. And then we'll add the reflections and darker patterns and highlights to it afterwards. Okay. Now if I'll make the color slightly darker with rose madder. I can just add small quantities of variety of color, maybe on the side. Now, while we're still painting quite bulky shapes, we're not doing as much nuances. We're kind of doing variety of color first. Don't be scared of simplifying things. So I'm going to do a little bit of darkness for the golden parts, and I might just do them the same here while I'm in the same color. Okay. So there's some sort of pattern going on, but all I'm going to do is something tall, something narrow, something wide. I'm not going to go into details of small windows and those parts of the domes. I'm not going to do the golden stars or crosses. I'm going to just give it an idea. And I want to work with a little bit more darker tone, and I'll need double violet for that. Only small amount. That's a beautiful color. So I can put a couple of reflections in there. And perhaps a lower segment here as well. Almost like a line. Okay. Again, it's still quite crude, quite simplified, not as much going on. I'd love to work with a little bit more extra color before we tidy things up. Just double check that it's enough for the width here. I think that's a little fallen down, but that's okay. I can top it up. So simplified shapes. If I wanted any tiny bit of a dab or just a hint there is something going up for the crosses, I don't have to do much details, just more of a hint of it. Now there are other towers behind, but I think I'm just going to keep it as it is. There are 4 blue towers and a golden one in the center. But I'm going to keep it as it is. Okay. And let's work into the darker tower and some of the windows. Again, I'm going to swap the brush. So I can have a nice pointy one. And some violet and ultramarine. A bit of Payne's grey will be good, and a dab of white. So kind of a bluey violet grey will be a good one for our tower here. And as we do, try to start not the most dark color to what we finally might want. And it's okay to work into all of it. Okay, if there is a bit of snow, maybe I'll work into it a little bit, making the snow slightly less. Don't think it will quite settle, it will slide down if it's on this angle type of roof. Okay. And I'll make the edge of the roof again similar darkness. If you can still see it, if you lost it, maybe that's a good way of sketching it. Straight line with tiny bit more curling down corners will give you that round roof effect. Okay. Just double check my corners are straight here. Okay. And let's do something similar for the rooftop on the hotel here. All I'll do some longer straightish angled lines to show the probably that metal surface, and the snow settled in between them in the grooves. Okay, if you wanted a little bit more of a sharper line at the top. Okay, maybe more sharper line at the bottom. Again, under the tree branches, we're probably going to lose that. So don't worry too much. And I want a couple of windows. Okay, and that could be quite nice. As a couple of blocks. The less perfect the window is going to be, the better in its pattern. Just try to do the rectangulars shapes, but if they're slightly lighter, darker, that's absolutely fine, because there will be curtains, there will be different spaces, there will be other shape, kind of other lighting around them. So that's all good. I might deliberately top up a couple of them with a tiny bit of extra darkness, maybe a bit of Payne's grey on top of that volume of paint. It's not going to be solid black. Tend to have a little more darkness maybe on top there. Okay, that's good. We're getting there. And I'm gonna be back to that earlier violet and blue with a dab of white. To do a little bit of graphics, kind of outlines, a little bit of shapes, a little bit of playfulness for the texture of some of the rooftops, and some texture around the fences. So let's start from the cathedral. Those round shapes, just touching them up. I preserved some of my gray lines and they're almost doing the work for me. There's a little more of the cathedral standing out here. If you're in doubt, not too sure, you can cover it up with a branch. I can see the border of the cathedral here. That's probably going to be my branch here. Might be something darker behind, or I might touch it up with some of the sky. And that will be another part of the roof. Just a little bit of some sort of pattern or gray, or mixed that gray with a bit of green. Makes that connection. So it's there, but it's not too, it doesn't stand out. I might even make one of the sides of the towers slightly darker. Okay, maybe a little bit too dark. That's probably the darkness of the windows we want. The darkness of the windows. And then it's got a little door. Perfect. So just smudging them slightly on the sides, or just, you know, how we were doing the imperfect border, playing with contrasts on the snow. That's the same going to be applying for windows. We can soften them. We have enough paint around that area to do it. This window might come out a little darker. It's going to be under the branch, and I might need to make sure you can see it. Okay. Any darknesses under the domes, under the blues and under the golden shape, just a little touch to get some details. And then we can start darkening up other darks. So for example, slightly darker panel on the main tower roof. Just a little one, just a hint. Something's going on, but it's not a huge volume. Can I put a darker blob dot? Again, not solid black, but a darker version of it. There's something going on the roof, maybe connections, maybe how things are holding the roof. That just makes it a little bit more natural. And that's where some of these darknesses I wanted to apply, kind of that sharpness of contrasts. To the golden tower. A little darker dab for one of the windows. Okay. Would have done a lighter, forgotten doing the lighter tones for the towers, windows as well. Just a mark at a time. and just see how they settle in. You can touch them up or smudge them. If it's too much, I can use some paler color to narrow them down if they're too wide. That will also give me some nice glowing light. So those are kind of planned nuances of how we can work. So that lovely round shape reflects the extra snow white. Might put another little lighter border. Yeah, just to show that beautiful snow reflecting that kind of little bit of off-white color, where we're losing, yeah, what's white, what's not. Everything is so pale, glowing. I just put tiny bit of something here as well to mirror it. That's good. So small nuances at a time now. And some paler grays anywhere else on the fences. So just a tiny bit more grays here and there. I'm going to try to make these lines of gray slightly different. I don't want them in darkness. I don't want them to be all the same plane. It's going to be quite not just boring, it will be too mundane. Well, boring, yes. Not natural, too plastic, too man-made. When they're settled in time here. Okay, we're probably not going to see much what's going on here, so I might leave those walls here. If we see a little bit of, it's almost like letters M's, how the indentations of the wall are done, like this. Yeah. And I might top it up with a tiny bit of white as well, perhaps a bit of snow, or touch things up, because I'm going to see part of that wall a little more. Okay, any other snow? Okay, that's all good. And while we're touching up gently the grey, let's touch up perhaps the cathedral very, very, very gently with a little extra white and a little extra off-white. So for example, pale emerald green, very pale, again, almost an off-white. By the time you probably even place the white on top of some of our green here, It will give us a paler emerald green color, just to show tiny bit more volume and light variation. And we can paint a little more block of snow on the rooftop, only if you wanted to. If you're happy with your cathedral as it is, maybe just do a little bit of highlights on the walls and nothing else. Okay. Maybe a little bit of snow for me on the tops of these white domes as well. When the golden dome, I'm going to add some fresh white and cadmium yellow. If I'll mix it together, I can just add tiny bit of hints of glow. Okay, and again, that's more of a last touch up on the cathedral. Okay. Anything on those tops where the surface will be changing, it will have some extra glow. We have yellow. I don't want to do anything here as light. Sometimes just if you wanted to do any details, let's say crosses, just using the back of the brush and sketching it will give you dark enough kind of pattern for representation of the shadows. And then if it's too big, you can smudge into that. And then a little dab of color, let's say in the center or top, so just more of a glow suggestion, and that's all works well. Okay, I'm smudging my sky there. Okay, that's enough probably for the cathedral here. And I just do a little reflection here. Those domes are too small, so I'm gonna stop at that. Okay. Right, then let's paint our trees. Now I'm picking up one of my older brushes, which starts gently splitting on the tip. I think that will give me some extra details when I start doing the pine needles and branches. So if you have got an older brush, that might be a better one for us. So let's have a Renier paint mixture now. I'm going to use it probably here so it's all in one place. And similar darkness and similar colors to our rooftop for the tower. So a bit of violet, some ultramarine, dab of Payne's gray, but maybe not too much. I think I ended up a bit too much. And small amount of white. And we can vary it from more blue to less blue to more violet to a little bit lighter, a little bit darker versions. Now, branches also have tiny bit of snow on some of them, but that snow, we can see a little bit more here in the low areas when we really, really look and some of the branches here. But it quite often clashes with the darkness of our buildings. So if you spot in and trying to paint some snow, so just take it steady, don't overwork it. And we can add to make that snow happen. So I'm going just to test my strokes. If I were to dry my brush, or maybe kind of wipe it on my palette first and then dry it, I should have some nice dry brushing textures. That will give me some beautiful strokes. Yeah, quite nice and round. It will be easier to do on some of the clear background areas, but where I have a lot of paint, it will be harder. So I need to persevere and almost kind of keep drying my brush and also keep loading it with some fresh paint. So let's start from somewhere here. Okay, it's awkward because it's the other way. Okay, so a little bit at a time. I can always make more strokes. I can always make it clustered and dark. So far, I just want to keep it a little bit more light, almost like finding the overall body or the darkness. Okay, this is quite a big shape, so let's start with the points, which we'll see against the sky. All the rest could be applied a bit more busier. Okay, I quite like the pressing on my brush first and then lifting it. I think that works best for me here. Okay, that's too parallel. Okay, I'm working into the volume, but that quality of the smudges has gone here, which is a shame, but I can work with that. Feels like I want to paint left-handed. Okay, maybe another branch will come close to the cathedral here. I'm running out of my paint. Let's make it slightly more into blue. That's quite nice strokes here. Yeah, I think I need to come around to this piece diagonally. I can't quite paint it. Okay. Especially closer to the towers, if we're adding any branches, and if I'm looking for the silhouette around this area, I can work with the shapes. Further back, I can always make it kind of paint over, add to it, but close to the fine elements like the towers, would rather not rework that area. Okay, maybe some looser, thinner branches. Then we can see part of the building there. Again, tiny bit more. And what I've done, I've used more blue colors on the branches here because they're against the blue and violet. I used more violet branches against the blue sky. So I'm trying to come up with the colors which don't clash as much. That might give us extra variety. Okay, there's a nice branch here, and I probably will paint some extra snow on that as well. And this is going to be much easier now for me, hopefully, because it's going to be easier for me to use the correct direction. So I want some of these ones a tiny bit less paint. It's better. I want to preserve part of my tower and maybe not cover it all. Maybe just do a little bit at a time. And if it's really necessary, go dark later. I want to see part of that beautiful edge. If it didn't quite work for you, it didn't paint too well, and this corner of the tower, put a branch over it. Tilted brush is really exciting, working really exciting here. Right, a little bit more darkness again. As I'm running out of paint. So I keep topping up my paint, otherwise I'll be just spreading loads of grey or white over, meaning pale grey. So the darkness brings some volume to my branches as well. Show some of them are with snow and some are bare, some more in a shadow. I think I might just bring it a tiny bit more out here. Okay, that's good. And slightly darker corner here. And perhaps even a couple of darker branches, just a little suggestive direction. Nearly there. So less is more now. So if you place a little bit too much darkness, hopefully it's in a stroke rather than a huge bulk. Then, you know, if it's too much, just keep on dabbing gently around. You can darken certain areas. Let's say I'm going to be darkening a couple of things in this corner. Just touch up a little more blue. But I quite like this area, so I think I'm more or less done here. Okay, that's quite nice and suggestive. What I have overdone is those two darknesses on the top. So I'm just going to break them down in a moment. I need a tiny bit of a couple of darker tones on the branches here as well. I think that's quite good, showing almost the snow on my branch here as well. It's a tiny bit more darkness. Okay, maybe too precise. Let's break it gently down. That's better. Okay, these two windows are too similar, so that's better as well. Okay, right, so the top two branches, which I have over darkened. So all I'm going to do is to bring some of that paler color back. So some fresh white and cobalt blue. So I'm just going to paint the gaps in between. Oh, and perhaps a little more snow. Breaking that volume, which is quite nice here. So never think, oh, I've overdone it. That's it, I've ruined my painting. You can always come back and paint over the shapes. Sometimes natural strokes gives you loads of extra pleasure, but it's okay to kind of come back to the basis, and then I can touch up if I wanted a little bit more sharpness. Maybe these branches are not going to have as much branches, but I would like to bring it down a bit more solid dark, because they are in the shadow. We are looking from underneath of them, so that extra sharpness of shadow is going to be present. Yeah, that's good. Balance those shapes. I'm constantly looking. I haven't got a line, or the shapes don't develop into a line. I want to have that lovely pine tree chaos. Okay, that's good. And I think finally I need a tiny bit of shadows of snow on my middle branch. I think that will work well. I'll go for ultramarine with some white. Just want to place a little bit of, okay, maybe a tiny bit more light. A little bit of snow as its line on the branch. Might not be seen directly into perfectly, but it's creates enough impression. I might just put tiny bit of highlights on that snow. So it starts a little sparkling on the border. That's better. So even against the shadows, we can see there's a bit of snow there as well. A bit of sharpness of my snow. Now I can see that softness next to the base might be less successful. Just dyed in the corner here. That's a personal preferences here. Little touches, bit more subtones and sublight on the wall of the Kremlin. Maybe how the snow is settling, maybe just a little something. Okay, the windows are disappeared here. I'm ready to stop. Little tweaks of sky if I need to touch the buildings. Just spotted the corner here by the tower. Just touching up that silhouette, that's better. Or anything else pale. As usual, you just have to give it a little bit of time to look for any other small nuances. I think that's maybe too much simplified is better here. That's it. And thank you very much. Painting Siberian Kremlin with me today. Thank you, and I hope to see your painting soon and give you some feedback on how you get on. Thank you.